April 15th, 1931. Coney Island, New York. The air is thick with cigarette smoke and salt from the nearby ocean. Inside a small Italian restaurant, a group of men sit around a table covered in plates of half-eaten food. Wine glasses, breadcrumbs, silence. At the center of the table sits Giuseppe, Joe the boss Masuria, the most powerful mafia boss in America. He eats slowly, calm, unbothered. Across from him, a younger man watches everything. Charles Lucky Luciano. His face is unreadable. Outside, the city hums. Inside, history is about to change. Moments later, Luciano excuses himself. "I'll be right back," he says. He walks toward the restroom. The door closes. Seconds pass. Then, gunshots explode through the restaurant. Fast, precise, relentless. When the smoke clears, Joe Masuria lies slumped in his chair dead. Cards scattered across the table. Blood soaking into the white cloth. The old order of the Mafia has just been executed, and the man who walked out moments before the shooting had just orchestrated it. New York City, early 1930s. The underworld is at war. They call it the Castellammarese War, a brutal power struggle between two factions of the Italian Mafia. On one side, Joe Masuria, a traditionalist, old school, ruthless. On the other, Salvatore Maranzano, equally dangerous, equally ambitious. The streets of New York become a battlefield. Assassinations, ambushes, disappearances, bodies found in alleys, in cars, floating in the Hudson River. This is not just a gang war. It's a civil war for control of the American Mafia. And caught in the middle is a new kind of gangster. Charles Luciano, born in Sicily, raised on the streets of New York. He is not like the old bosses. He doesn't believe in tradition. He believes in business. Luciano sees something the others don't. The future of organized crime isn't loyalty to old customs. It's structure, efficiency, profit. But men like Masuria don't think that way. They rule through fear, and they expect absolute obedience. Luciano rises quickly under Masuria's regime. He becomes a trusted lieutenant. Smart, strategic, dangerous. But behind the loyalty, there is calculation. Luciano watches the war drag on. Money is being lost. Opportunities are slipping away. The constant bloodshed is bad for business. And worse, it's attracting attention. Law enforcement begins circling. The longer the war continues, the more vulnerable they all become. Luciano understands something critical. This war has no future. Only one side can survive. And whoever wins will control everything. By 1931, the conflict reaches its breaking point. Both Masuria and Maranzano are exhausted. Their crews are weakened. Paranoia spreads through every level of the organization. Trust becomes a liability. Luciano begins making quiet moves. Careful, calculated. He opens secret lines of communication, not with his own boss, but with the enemy, Salvatore Maranzano. Behind closed doors, deals are discussed. Terms are negotiated. The war can end, but only under one condition. Joe Masuria has to go. Luciano faces a choice. Remain loyal to the man who gave him power, or eliminate him, and reshape the Mafia forever. He chooses power. The plan is simple, deceptively simple. Luciano arranges a meeting with Masuria. A casual lunch. Coney Island. Neutral territory. No suspicion. Masuria agrees. Why wouldn't he? Luciano is one of his most trusted men. The meeting is set. April 15th, 1931. But behind the scenes, the real operation is already in motion. Luciano assembles a team. Not just any men. Killers who are loyal, but not directly tied to Masuria. Among them, Vito Genovese, Albert Anastasia, Joe Adonis, Benjamin Bugsy Siegel. Young, ruthless, efficient. This isn't just a hit. It's a transition of power. Luciano gives clear instructions. Wait for the signal. No mistakes. No hesitation. Everything depends on timing. The day arrives. Masuria enters the restaurant. Relaxed, confident, untouchable. Luciano greets him. They sit. Food is ordered. Wine is poured. To anyone watching, it's just another meeting between boss and lieutenant. But underneath the surface, every second is ticking toward violence. Luciano plays his role perfectly. Calm, respectful, engaged. Masuria eats, talks, laughs. He has no idea. At some point, Luciano stands. "I need to use a restroom." A simple sentence, but it changes everything. He walks away from the table, step by step, closer to the door. He disappears from sight. And then, the shooters enter. Fast, silent, weapons drawn. Masuria barely has time to react. Gunfire erupts. Bullets tear through the room. Glass shatters. Chairs overturn. Within seconds, it's over. Joe Masuria is dead. The most powerful mafia boss in America, eliminated in broad daylight. The killers vanish just as quickly as they arrived. No witnesses willing to talk. No evidence left behind. And Luciano, he's nowhere to be found. When police arrive, the scene is chaos. A crime scene frozen in time. A dead boss slumped over a table. Playing cards scattered like symbols of fate. Detectives begin asking questions. Who would dare kill Joe Masuria? Who had the power? Who had the motive? Luciano's name surfaces almost immediately. But there's a problem. No one saw him pull the trigger. No one can place him at the scene during the shooting. Officially, he wasn't there. Unofficially, everyone knows. Within days, the war begins to shift. Without Masuria, his faction collapses. Men defect. Alliances change overnight. Salvatore Maranzano emerges as the new leader. He declares himself Capo di tutti capi, boss of all bosses. But the real winner is Luciano. Because this wasn't just about ending a war. It was about rewriting the rules. The old guard is fading, and a new era is about to begin. One built on organization, on structure, on control. But first, there's still one more obstacle standing in the way. And Luciano already knows what needs to be done next. The hit on Joe Masuria wasn't just a murder. It was a message. The old mafia was over, and the man behind it was just getting started. May 1931, New York City. The Castellammarese War is over, but peace has not arrived. Instead, a new ruler rises from the ashes of bloodshed. Salvatore Maranzano. In the days following Joe Masuria's assassination, Maranzano moves quickly. He declares himself the supreme authority of the American Mafia. Capo di tutti capi, boss of all bosses. From his office in the Bronx, he begins reshaping the underworld. Families are reorganized. Territories are assigned. Rules are rewritten. On paper, it looks like order. In reality, it is dictatorship. And in a world built on pride and power, dictators do not survive long. Charles, Lucky Luciano watches closely. From the outside, he appears loyal. He attends meetings. He listens. He nods. But behind closed doors, a different conversation is happening. A conversation about survival. Maranzano is not Masuria. He is more structured, more intelligent, more dangerous in a different way. But he makes a critical mistake. He believes the old hierarchy must return. Bosses beneath him, soldiers beneath them, absolute authority at the top. Luciano sees the flaw immediately. The old system created war. Too much ego, too much competition, too much blood. And now, Maranzano is rebuilding the same machine that just collapsed. Only stronger, more centralized, more threatening. Summer 1931. Tension spreads through New York's underworld. Maranzano begins consolidating power. He summons key figures, demands loyalty, inspects operations. But what he does not realize is that many of the men around him are already against him, especially the younger generation. Men like Luciano, Vito Genovese, Meyer Lansky, Benjamin Bugsy Siegel. They are not traditionalists. They are businessmen. And Maranzano's vision feels like regression, not progress. A quiet resistance begins to form. Meetings take place in hidden rooms, in back offices, in apartments across Manhattan. No official records, no formal alliances, only understanding. Maranzano must go. Luciano takes control of the planning. But this is not Masuria's death all over again. This time, the target is more cautious, more paranoid. Maranzano has begun suspecting betrayal. He limits access, changes routines, keeps armed guards nearby. So Luciano changes the strategy. If Maranzano cannot be reached through trust, he will be reached through deception. The plan is built carefully, every detail considered. The hit will not look like a mob attack. It will look like something else entirely. A federal operation, men posing as government agents, officials, inspectors, the kind of presence that commands compliance and fear. September 10th, 1931. Manhattan, New York. The Equitable Building looms over the financial district. Inside, Salvatore Maranzano sits in his office. He is uneasy. Reports of unrest have reached him. Whispers of disloyalty. He is beginning to understand something is wrong, but he does not yet know how close the danger is. Around 2 p.m., the elevator doors open. 4 men step out. Calm. Professional. They're dressed as federal agents. Their presence is convincing. They carry documents. They speak with authority. They request to see Maranzano. The guards hesitate, but the disguise works. They are allowed through. Inside the office, Maranzano stands behind his desk. He is cautious, suspicious, but not yet alarmed. The men approach. One speaks briefly. Routine questions. Verification procedures. For a moment, everything appears legitimate. Then the atmosphere changes. Subtle, almost invisible. One of the men steps forward. Another closes the door, and the illusion collapses. Weapons are drawn. Fast. Efficient. No warning. Maranzano reaches for nothing. There is no time. Gunfire erupts inside the office. Controlled. Close range. Final. Salvatore Maranzano collapses behind his desk. The man who declared himself boss of all bosses is gone within seconds. The shooters exit just as calmly as they entered. No panic. No chaos. Only silence left behind. Within hours, rumors spread across New York. Maranzano is dead, killed inside his own office, by unknown assailants. But within the Mafia, there is no confusion. They know exactly what happened. And who is responsible? Charles Luciano, the same man who helped eliminate Mafia, has now removed his successor. 2 bosses, 2 executions, 1 architect. But this time, Luciano does something different. He does not step into Maranzano's empty throne. He destroys it, because he understands something fundamental. The title of boss of all bosses is the source of conflict. It invites war. It creates targets. So instead of taking absolute power, he eliminates the concept entirely. In the weeks that follow, a radical restructuring begins. The American Mafia is reorganized, not under one man, but under a governing body, a commission, a council of major crime families. Decisions are shared. Disputes are settled collectively. No single boss dominates all others. This is Luciano's vision. Not chaos, not dictatorship, but balance. A system designed to prevent another war like the one that just ended. Men like Frank Costello, Meyer Lansky, and Vito Genovese rise in influence. But none are above the structure itself. For the first time, the Mafia becomes an organization instead of a battlefield. Law enforcement, at the time, does not fully understand what has happened. They see murders, power shifts, new names emerging, but they do not yet grasp the architecture forming beneath the surface. A hidden corporate structure of organized crime, built in the shadows, designed for survival. For Luciano, the consequences are immediate. He is no longer just a lieutenant. He is the central figure in a new order. But power at this level is never safe. The same men who helped him rise are now part of a fragile equilibrium. Trust is limited. Loyalty is conditional. And every alliance carries the weight of potential betrayal. Outside the Mafia, the world continues unaware. Inside it, a silent transformation has taken place. 2 bosses have fallen, and in their place, a system has been born, one that will define organized crime in America for decades. But systems built in blood never remain stable forever, and Luciano's greatest challenge has not yet arrived. October 1931, New York City. The war is over. The bosses are dead. But Charles, Lucky Luciano cannot enjoy victory, because victory in the Mafia is never permanent. It is only temporary survival, and survival always demands payment. In the months following the killings of Joe Mafia and Salvatore Maranzano, the American underworld transforms into something new. Quietly, systematically, without public announcement. The old idea of a single supreme boss is gone. In its place, a structure emerges. The National Crime Syndicate. At its center sits a governing body known simply as the Commission. Luciano's design is simple but revolutionary. 5 major New York families share power. The Genovese family, the Gambino family, the Lucchese family, the Bonanno family, the Colombo family. No single man rules all. Instead, Decisions are negotiated. Votes are taken. Conflicts are mediated. It is not democracy. It is control disguised as balance. And Luciano is at the center of it all, not as a dictator, but as an architect. From the outside, New York appears unchanged. Skyscrapers rise. Traffic moves. Businesses open every morning. But beneath the surface, something darker is operating with precision. Labor rackets, union infiltration, extortion schemes, illegal gambling networks, prostitution rings, bootlegging remnants still operating in the shadows. Money flows upward through invisible channels. And at the top of this system sit men like Luciano, Frank Costello, Meyer Lansky, and Vito Genovese. Names that will define organized crime for decades. But power attracts attention, and attention attracts law enforcement. By the mid-1930s, the federal government begins to notice patterns. Violence has decreased, but coordination has increased. Crimes appear more organized, more structured, almost corporate. Investigators begin to realize something unsettling. The Mafia is no longer a collection of gangs. It is an organization, a national network, and Charles Luciano is a key figure in its formation. Manhattan. The pressure closes in. A major investigation, led by District Attorney Thomas Dewey, targets prostitution networks tied to Luciano's operations. Witnesses are found. Records are collected. Arrests are made. Piece by piece, the government builds its case. Luciano is not indicted for the murders of Masuria or Maranzano. There is no direct evidence. No surviving witnesses willing to speak. But the racketeering charges are enough. June 1936. Luciano is arrested. The most powerful organized crime figure in New York is finally in custody. The trial becomes a spectacle. Reporters crowd the courthouse. Photographers wait outside. Inside, prosecutors describe a vast criminal enterprise. Bribery, prostitution, control of vice operations across the city. Luciano listens quietly. No visible fear, only calculation. Because even now, he understands the system he built is still protecting him, or at least delaying his fall. July 1936. The verdict is delivered. Guilty. Luciano is sentenced to 30 to 50 years in prison. It is a stunning moment. The architect of the modern mafia, removed from the streets. But even behind bars, his influence does not disappear. Messages still pass through trusted associates. Orders are still interpreted. Decisions still ripple through the organization he helped build. The system continues without him physically present, because systems, once built, outlive their creators. But prison changes everything slowly. Distance creates weakness. Absence creates competition. Men like Vito Genovese begin positioning themselves for power. Frank Costello rises in political influence. The balance Luciano designed begins to shift. Not collapse, but drift. Then comes the war. World War II. The United States government faces new threats. And in an unexpected turn, authorities reach out to imprisoned mob figures for assistance in securing the docks against sabotage. Among them, Charles Luciano. From his prison cell, he becomes part of Operation Underworld, a strange alliance between the U.S. Navy and organized crime. Dockworkers are controlled. Strikes are prevented. Ports are secured. Luciano, once the enemy of the state, becomes a temporary asset. It is not redemption. It is necessity. After years of negotiations, Luciano's sentence is commuted. He is deported, sent back to Italy. New York is behind him, but the system he built remains. The commission continues operating. The families continue their structure. The syndicate survives. Luciano watches from afar as the world he created evolves without him. January 26, 1962. Naples, Italy. Charles, Lucky Luciano suffers a fatal heart attack at the airport. He is meeting a film producer about a possible movie on his life. He never leaves the terminal alive. No mob war. No gunfire. No dramatic execution. Just the end of a man who once controlled an empire built in shadows. In the years that follow, historians and investigators begin to fully understand what Luciano created. Not just a criminal career, but a system, a corporate model of organized crime, decentralized power, shared authority, structured operations, a blueprint that would influence the mafia for generations. But the story of Lucky Luciano is not just about innovation. It is about consequence. Joe Masuria was eliminated to end a war. Salvatore Maranzano was removed to prevent dictatorship. But what followed was not peace. It was evolution, a more stable form of organized crime, built on the same foundation of violence. And beneath all of it remains a simple truth. Every system Luciano built, every alliance he formed, every boss he helped remove, was rooted in one decision: a quiet walk away from table in Coney Island. A moment of silence before the gunfire began. In the end, the Mafia did not end its wars. It only learned how to hide them better. And Lucky Luciano was the man who taught it how.